Hey you guys, Laurel here. So today I wanted to talk about and point out some anatomical landmarks or regions that you might hear cued in a yoga class. So us yoga teachers can tend to like to geek out on anatomy, guilty, but not everyone in the room enjoys that or really knows what you're talking about. I know when I first started for years, I didn't know where the sternum was. I knew it was somewhere around this region, but I didn't know specifically what the hell the yoga teacher was talking about. So since I have this skeleton here, I figured, might be a nice idea to just kind of go through regions that you might hear in a yoga class. So we'll start with the crown of the head. So crown of the head, top of the head, nice and simple. You might hear a yoga teacher say, lengthen through the crown of your head. That's to get you to be a little more upright instead of slouchy. If we move more south, you have these two bones here. You have one on the right, one on the left. These are called your collarbones, your clavicles. So they're right about this region. And you might hear a yoga teacher say, broaden across your collarbones. That's just, again, a way to get you to find a little more space across the chest versus this. Then we have the sternum. I know where it is now. So the sternum is right along the front center of your rib cage. And if we move over to the sides, you have your shoulder sockets, which is a ball and socket joint, just like your hip. This is the humerus, your upper arm bone, and then forearm and hand. I think you know, hopefully you know those. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Then if we move more south, you have the pelvis here. So the pelvic bowl, you'll probably hear your yoga teacher talk about that at some point. If you look at the front of the pelvis, you have these two kind of bony protrusions called, we like to refer to them as the hip bones or frontal hip bones, the fancy names ASIS. And you can find these on yourself if you bring your hands to the right and left side of your pelvis and just kind of palpate around. You might be able to do it standing. It's a little easier to feel for these two bony protrusions when you lie down, so feel free to try that out. And then you have your pubic bone, so right around here. You might hear a yoga teacher say, zip up your pubic bone to your navel. That's just a way to get your abs on, to take you more into a neutral or posterior tilt of the pelvis, just to get the abs on. That's normally why that's cute, or at least from my experience. Then if you turn this guy around, or girl, you have these two plated bones along the upper back. These are your shoulder blades. And they actually aren't attached to the rib cage as you might see here. They actually sit right on top and they move away from the spine towards the spine, up and down. There's a lot of movement here. Then moving south back to the pelvis, you have your ischial tuberosities or your sits bones. So if you sit down, you kind of rock a little side to side. You might hear a yoga teacher say, stack yourself on top of your sits bones. So again, that's so that you're nice and stacked and upright. Let's see, the spine. So we have the cervical spine, which is your neck. Then you have the thoracic spine, which is kind of mid upper back. That's that region we want to access and back bend so we can find some space across the front of the body. Then you have your lumbar spine, which is that curve in your lower back, which is more pronounced on others and some not so much, but we all have some sort of curve there. And then you have this plated bone here that's not flat. It actually kind of rounds like this, and it's called your sacrum. And then here, this little guy, you have your tailbone or your coccyx. So you might hear in class a teacher say, draw your tailbone to the ground, which is another cue of bringing your pelvis into neutral or moving into kind of that posterior tilt of the pelvis, again, to get your abs on. Then if we zoom out a bit, you'll have your femur or your thigh bone, which is your upper leg bone. You have the quads in the front, hamstrings in the back. Then you have your lower leg and your foot, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Before we go though, I do want to point out three regions of the foot. So depending on who your teacher is, you might hear your yoga teacher talk about 4 corners of the foot or 3 corners of the foot. I like the 3, the triad. So let's turn our little friend around. Hopefully you can see this. So if you look at the sole of the foot, you have the heel, calcaneus, then you have the big toe mound. And in order for you to access, if you just stand on your feet and then you lift your toes up towards your face, you'll really feel that kind of ball just below the root of your big toe. So that's your big toe mound. And then you have your baby toe mound, which is same region, just root of the baby toe. So this forms the triad of your foot, which is where you're going to want to anchor down when you're in standing postures or when you're extending one leg back behind you. It just helps you to activate your legs. So let me know if this was helpful or if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday. Bye.